Dave Hensel, BushTroopers.com here. Derek's back. We're looking at the garden. This is his third trip here, and that's my fourth video. So we're going to go and see how it is. It's obviously really, as you can see, grown in pretty good. So we'll go from there.
Hey Dave. Okay, so let's talk about a couple things right off the bat. The garden is packed full of food. You're doing a great job eating and what's eating from it and making sure that you're going through it, but there's more that you can be doing. We're going to talk about a couple things today. We're going to talk about pruning tomatoes and how to prune your tomatoes, and also how tomatoes grow. We're going to talk about zucchini, and we're going to talk about cucumbers specifically. We're also going to talk a little bit about some next steps with the garden, and now that it's in the middle of July, where we want to go from here. All right, so basically we've got four different sections of the garden that we're talking about. Our trellis stuff, anything that's climbing in the back, anything that needs some space. Peas on the side, we've got onions and some carrots in the middle, some kale. We've got an area of spinach, which we're going to pull out today because the spinach is long done. And we have some more lettuce, and we have some beets, and then broccoli up in the center. So one of the things, so this kale is great. You can eat the whole thing. You can also eat the stalk. So when you're pulling the kale, you can also eat this entire stalk. And you can also use the stalk in soups as well, which is also tasty. But when you're eating the kale, there's lots of different things that you can do with it. And kale is one of those vegetables that people get into later on. It's not one of those natural vegetables, so you got to experiment with it a little bit. You can certainly use it in salads. You can use it on burgers. You can use it doing whatever you want to do. But you can also make things like kale chips. So instead of potato chips, you can take a leaf of kale, cut it up, remove the hard stalk in the middle, the woody stalk in the middle, olive oil, salt, pepper, stick in the oven for a little bit, around 350, 400, just to dry it out, and then you've got a nice little nutritious chip, and it's really tasty. And because it's a thicker lettuce, it'll stand up to the heat, it'll stand up to the oven, and the olive oil will help crisp it up a little bit.
Cool.
So spinach is more of a cool season vegetable. So in the heat of the summer, especially the heat that we've had in the last little bit, all that's happening is that you're not getting big leaves or anything like that from the spinach. The plant is putting all of its energy into regenerating and sending out as many seeds as it can. So we can try and do some spinach again in the fall, but for right now, it's not worth it. It's too hot. So what we'll do is we'll use the shade that's given us from the broccoli. We'll put some more lettuce down. And that way in a couple of weeks we'll get some more lettuce in, and while you're munching the rest of this lettuce over on this side, we'll get some other lettuce coming up underneath here, and that way we'll get a succession plant and another crop of lettuce.
Excellent.
Okay, alright, so let's talk tomatoes. So this tomato plant is one of the ones that we lost the labels on, so unfortunately we don't know what it is until we get some tomatoes out, which we'll figure out in a little bit. But I want to talk about pruning tomato plants and about how tomato plants grow, because it'll help you understand how to grow them in a different style that suits you, right? So there's really two different kinds there's two main styles of growing tomatoes. There's basically a single stalk method, and there's a multiple stalk method, where single stalk method is that you prune all of the tomato plant, to have one main stem, and then it branches off into the tomatoes, as opposed to what we have going on here, which is basically tomatoes, and as much as they possibly can, we just let them grow as much as they can. So one of the things with all tomato plants, though, is that there is a small amount of pruning that you want to do, mostly because you have lots of different bacteria and things that live in soil, which is all, I mean, good bacteria and bad bacteria, it's fine. But tomato plants can be very susceptible to it. As you can see, a little bit of the yellowing of the vines down here. So what you want to do is you want to prune off the bottom leaves of the plant. And what that's going to do is that when you get rain and water and other things, can't eat those, it eliminates the splashback that you get on the leaves, and it can just keep the plant healthier if it can't get anything splashed up on it. Okay, so pruning tomato plants. and tomato plants and tomato growth in general. So what we have here is, this is going to be a little bit complicated to see, but if you come around this side and kind of come in here a little bit. So the way that tomato plants grow is that you have stalks and you have suckers. So this is a great example of a sucker and a sucker. So this is a baby sucker, this is a bigger sucker. So what you have is you have a main stem here, this is the main stem, it's very thick. And tomato plants have a very cool feature to them, is that they can grow roots. That's why they're all furry. These are actual roots, they're baby roots. They can grow roots amongst all the way up the entire main stalk. So when tomato plants are growing, you get a leaf, so you get a branch with leaves. Now this branch with leaves will never turn into anything aside from a branch with leaves. But right in the middle here you have a sucker that comes out. Now what's happening is that this sucker will turn into its own stem and produce its own fruit, much like this one has and this one has as well. So this is a much bigger version of it. But you can see a baby sucker right here coming up, and that's how tomato plants grow. So what you generally want to do is if you let the plant go, which is perfectly fine, you have to give it some level of support, because as you can see it's certainly getting a little floppy, but we have a large number of fruit coming up. We've got a cluster here, a cluster here, a cluster here, here, lots of them, right? And anywhere we have flowers we have tomatoes. So we've got a lot that's going on. So the plants are putting a lot of energy into producing branches and flowers and fruit, but we have to start supporting this. What you're going to need to do is put a cage around it, or even just a stake, much like you've done with the peas. You can just throw an old hockey stick or something like that in, just to give the main stalk some support. And you want to support this one too, because this is going to turn into its own branch. But once we harvest this fruit from here, I think that we shouldn't harvest any more. I mean, I don't like sacrificing flowers, because I want to get as many tomatoes as we possibly can. But as you can see here, we've got a small group here and two sets of flowers here and here. I think this is a cherry tomato plant. You know what? It might be a plum tomato. These look like plum tomatoes kind of. Either way, we'll find out in a bit. So we've got three different groups of tomatoes at this stage. Because this branch is off on its own, and it's a small one that comes off the base of the plant, I'm not going to recommend that we keep it for anything longer than harvest whatever tomatoes we have now. So any other flowers that you see coming up, or any other branches that you see coming off, just pinch them off, so that way we don't have any more. Keep all the branches, but no more suckers or anything like that, because this is your main stem right here. So this main stem is coming up along this side, and then it'll continue to come up this way. And then this is going to be your next main stem on this side. So don't let it get much taller than this. That way we'll harvest the tomatoes that we have here. Then we'll pinch it off, and we'll keep the rest of the plant on this side, this main stalk, growing and producing flowers. All right. So what we've done today is we've pruned the tomato plants, we've pruned the cucumber plants, pruned the zucchini, thinned out some of the beets, succession planted some beans for a fall crop of beans. We've talked about broccoli, we've talked about peas, succession planting of lettuce, onions, and everything else that's coming out of the garden. Things are going very well. In about 2 weeks or so, we should start banging out more tomatoes, cucumbers, and some zucchini. We'll be harvesting for the rest of the summer. I'm Derek from At Home Organic Farms. You're watching BushTroopers.com.